私の先生。ブス。
Okay, kid, which do you think will go better at your funeral, the chicken or the beef? Yet again, we got a cold opener introducing our spotlight character of the week. Definitely not a bad intro, as it did give us a basic idea of this character in a short amount of time, but we'll cover more of that in the episode proper. On that note, we open with Kaori and her breaking news. Yeah, does anyone want to tell her that printing media is going to go the way of the dinosaurs? Also, not using both sides of the paper? Wasteful. Anyway, according to her, their classmate Masaru Yada had gotten into a fight with 3 junior high kids. The boy in question certainly wasn't denying those claims, and even kind of lived up to his delinquent reputation by putting almost zero effort into his academics. I mean, he did technically put a little effort towards the wrong areas. I mean, I do think creativity is important, but not when it involves risking your life there. Yet, not so surprisingly, Seki-sensei took it in stride and even tried to consult the clearly troubled kid. Through a little exposition dump, we learned that Masaru's father was returning from a long business trip from Germany, and yet he did seem all that excited. I mean, I can understand not wanting to share his excitement with these gossip-loving little brats, but he was also clearly not telling something to his teacher. The Ojamajo would end up discussing this while making some new products at the Mahodo, and Doremi was able to show some significant improvement in her crafting skills, not as though that's saying much just yet, as everyone couldn't guess what sort of sea creature it was. I think a certain printing instructor could verify that for you. Anyway, Hazuki was the one who ended up bringing up Masaru. As it turned out, they had known each other ever since kindergarten, which we learned about through a really cute little flashback. Yeah, while the watercolor backgrounds can be a little iffy for me at times, it works here as it is a flashback, hence it's meant to look a little hazy since it is based off of Hazuki's imperfect memories. The fact that it has an even more childlike style and glossiness to it really hammers this home, so good stuff. That actually looks better than pretty much everything else in this episode. Yeah, don't worry, we'll cover that. Still, Hazuki recognized him as a genuinely good kid, but some unfortunate misunderstandings often ended up painting him as a delinquent. It would have been nice if we could actually see what sort of incidents led to these misunderstandings, show don't tell guys. Regardless though, at some point it all did become a self-fulfilling prophecy, as the current Masaru was certainly no model student. Hazuki of course still believed there was good in him, but Majurika, being the ever-contrarian, said people can just become bad, saddening Kazuki and leading into this little bit of nightmare fuel. The next day, Kaori had some more breaking news. I'm sorry, even with the subtitles I didn't completely get that. Seriously, between this and Digimon, are you trying to blow out my eardrums? Okay, so after viewing the episode for a little bit, we learned that Masaru had been detained by the authorities after being caught trespassing at a warehouse at the pier. As a result, rumors of his delinquency really started to fly, but Hazuki wasn't going to hear any of it. She went to see the principal to confirm this incident, and okay, what's going on with this running animation? Yeah, I think it's about time I address this. The animation in this episode is kind of all over the place. Some of it can look quite good, like the flashback sequence, and other times it looks like everyone has turned into a Bomberman character. Give Mitsuru Aoyama some credit, at least he's consistent with his bad animation. Here, it feels really jarring how much characters like Hazuki can't seem to maintain any sort of continuity. I looked into who the animation director was for this episode, and apparently it's Chuji Nakajima, who's normally a very solid animator for both this and Precure. I guess they might have been having an off day, though I think the more likely reason was because they were being too experimental with this one. As I pointed out, the flashback scene was clearly using a very different style than the rest of the episode. Thus, I do believe the animators ended up spending more time and effort on that, plus another flashback sequence coming up. As a result, much of this episode's overall production quality ended up suffering, which is very unfortunate, especially in regards to a specific scene coming up. Again, I won't say this was the worst animation I've ever seen, just some of the most uneven overall. Anyway, that pencil neck vice principal was fulfilling his very stereotypical design and tried to get Masaru expelled in spite of not getting any sort of testimony or argument from the kid himself.
Yeah, don't we all love these one-dimensional cliched characters?
Also, hi there staff members trying to sneak in cameos. Can't wait for Psycho Mantis to come in and make y'all laugh. At least he would be more interesting than this putz who predictably couldn't stand up to Seki and her objections.
He didn't say you need to go that far, Seki. In fact, if the school actually did that, I think that would be the basis for a wrongful termination lawsuit.
But whenever main conflict established, I guess. Wanting to prevent their teacher from losing her job, the Ojamajo used their study hall time to look for evidence of Masaru's innocence at the warehouse. Of course, they turned to the magical stage for help, which gave them a surprisingly straightforward and helpful answer in the form of a remote that would let them see into the past.
Actually, I take that back. Where the hell is the Christopher Walken that's supposed to come with that?
Anyway, looking into the past, they discovered the location of something Masaru had brought with him and later hid when he was caught by the warehouse guards. It turned out to be a trumpet that Masaru just so happened to come back for at this exact moment. Realizing that he was probably just going to up and leave without explaining anything like he usually does, the Ojamajo ended up telling him about Seki's situation. And once again, conveniently, the character in question arrived at the scene. I would say all of this does feel a little rushed, but I'll also admit I like Seki-sensei's speech here, where she rightfully chewed this kid out for his overly recessive attitude towards everything, Masaru's only response being some weak little punches.
I will say, this is a fairly decent dramatic scene, especially thanks to Seki's expressions here, but I don't think it's hitting me quite as hard as it's supposed to, which I will explain later.
For now, I'll just say the timing and animation here feels a little awkward. Anyway, he revealed that he did want to tell the truth, but thought no one would believe him. However, Seki-sensei was more than willing to listen to him. And with that, he finally revealed his reasoning for sneaking into the warehouse, which was to practice playing the trumpet.
Why?
練習してるところを人に見られるのが恥ずかしいんだね。
Yeah, but then why break into the echoey warehouse?
あいつら急に絡んできてトランペット蹴りやがったから。
I mean, couldn't he have just have done it on the pier where there wouldn't be a lot of people there at night? I think at worst, the security guards would probably just ask him to leave rather than arrest him.
In fact, as we learn through yet another flashback, his father did exactly that before leaving for Germany. And again, a really nice scene with a slightly modded art style to match with Masaru's likely rose-tinted feelings of nostalgia. It really makes us understand why he would want to practice the trumpet. Not so much why he would break into a warehouse for the sake of it, but still, on its own, this is a really good emotional scene with some excellent trumpet playing. Of course, Masaru was still nowhere near as good as his father, but they also made it sound like he was definitely trying at least. Thus, the episode ended with Masaru likely going to get a pardon thanks to Seki-sensei, but not so much the Ojamajo for sneaking out of school. Wah wah.
This was better than some episodes we've covered in recent weeks, if only because of a really badass teacher. And while the animation was a little uneven, it still had some really good moments. My biggest problem was, of course, with the plot and a certain pattern I've noticed with this episode's writer.
This was writer Akatsuki Yamatoya's third episode for this series. His previous two were 6 and 12, episodes that I consider to be on opposite ends of the quality spectrum. The former being one of my personal favorites, and the latter being my least favorite. This episode, I would say, is in the middle, though leaning towards 6's quality. Interestingly though, all three of these shared a common trait, a focus character who committed at least one reprehensible action. Nobuko's episode worked because she showed obvious regret over her terrible lie, while Misaki didn't work because they never acknowledged his overly aggressive and clingy behavior. Meanwhile, Masaru kind of worked, as at least he knew he was doing wrong and regretted it. But as I went over, it still didn't completely justify his frankly illogical actions. I think it would have really helped if we could have learned more about his past, as we only really got a very second-hand account from Hazuki. It probably would have helped if we had learned about one of the incidents that he was supposedly wrongly blamed for. Again, show, don't tell, guys, otherwise yeah, we don't really know much about this kid. I think, like Misaki, Yamatoya went overboard in trying to make this character sympathetic while forgetting to make him an actual character first. And I get it, this is also meant to show the negative effects of gossip, which unfortunately have become an even bigger problem as time has gone by. But Masaru's unexplained obstinance didn't help matters, and we really didn't see how the gossip affected him until I think the very end, thus resulting in more of a melodrama than anything. I wouldn't call this kid a bad character by any means, just kind of incomplete. Thankfully, the best teacher was there to pick up the slack. Seki-sensei showed not only the temperance of a saint, but also how much she truly respected all of her students even when they were being legitimate brats. That moment of her just taking Masaru's punches showed all of her dedication. She clearly has a lot of deeper layers to her aside from her seemingly stern attitude. If the warehouse incident had just been thought out a little more, again, I think there are a lot of other secluded locations he could have practiced at to avoid getting bullied, and if the animation were a little more even throughout this, I would be praising this episode a lot more because I do think it has a lot of great moments. As is, it's definitely above average, but just like Masaru, I think they do need to acknowledge a few of their issues.
By the time this goes up, I should be doing my final recordings for certain singing magical girls for its season. From there, the second part should be up at least a couple weeks later, and then I'll work on some of my end of the year videos. Look forward to it, and until then though, fair for now my friends, and yeah, I'm gonna go confirm with Valsy whether or not that's a sardine. Kind of looks like a snapper to me.